Awesome. Okay, well, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Leslie. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Well, let me just introduce you to our audience. So, big welcome to author and fitness coach Amanda Thebe. Amanda is the author of the Amazon bestseller Menopocalypse. Love that name. How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. Very important words. And with nearly 30 years of experience in the fitness industry, Amanda is a highly regarded expert on women's fitness and health and a passionate advocate for women in this midlife transition. So, welcome to the Health Insider, Amanda.
Thank you for having me today, Leslie. I'm glad to be talking about this.
Yeah, no, we're really, really happy to have you here. So, what we're going to talk about today, I mean, among other things, but we're going to focus a little bit on nutrition, diet, metabolism, and the weight body sort of composition management during, perimenopause and menopause, which I know all of my friends talk about, think about, what the heck is going on? Why am I gaining weight, especially around that midriff area? So that's really my first lead in question. Why does this happen to women in perimenopause and into postmenopause?
So specifically the change in fat around the mid center, right? That's what we were, yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really interesting, right? And I've studied nutrition for about a decade now, and I wrote a book about nutrition, and we're learning all of the time, right? Nutrition scientists are looking at the data as we have it, and we actually do have quite a lot of good data. I mean, there
Mm,
can always be more, but so far the data is pretty robust that we have. And so
mm,
what happens in menopause, as we know, is our sexual hormones start to decline. Specifically, in this case, we're talking about estrogen. And when
mm.
estrogen declines, what can happen, and it doesn't always happen, and it's really important to stay in the gray area of nuance, Leslie, is what
Mhm.
can happen is that our body's fat distribution and storage changes more from, say, the traditional pear shape to an apple. And what
Mhm.
women who start to put on weight find that whereas they would have held it around their bum and their legs before, they tend to find they hold it around their stomach. And what can happen is an increase in the visceral fat in our body, and it's important to know there's a distinction between subcutaneous and visceral fat, and the subcutaneous is our jiggly fat. It's just the easiest way to talk about it. And the visceral fat we cannot see. It's
Okay.
all around our organs, and and you can be super small and thin and still have visceral fat, right?
Oh,
It's just the way that our fat deposits are stored in our body. And what's really important to say to women is if you have a high percentage of visceral fat, it can lead to increased health conditions, and that's just an important distinction.
right.
But it's difficult to know if you've got it or not because you can't see it. You can't just
Oh,
assume you've got it, and you can't assume you don't have it. It usually is through things like DEXA scans that we know this. But even
oh.
if we just remove the seriousness of that conversation away, what's important to know is that when you put weight on in menopause, it's multifactorial, right? Our estrogen levels specifically declining can change where fat deposits lie on our body, but it doesn't happen to everyone. Not
Mhm.
everyone puts on weight. Some people do, some people don't, but more people do than less. Okay, the numbers are
Yeah.
up there at like 60, 70% will put on at least 5 pounds, right?
Okay.
Now, that just doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't just happen because you're going through menopause. And I think that digging into that is really important.
Okay.
What we know is as we get older and as we move less, we become at risk of a lot of things like losing our muscle mass, something called sarcopenia. We're sort of
Mhm.
touching on a few of the speaking points that we were going to touch today, so there'll be a lot of crossover, but sarcopenia is when we start to lean body mass. And for the purposes of this conversation, let's talk about that as being muscle. If you
Mhm.
don't try actively to hold on to muscle as you get older, move more and do resistance training, you will start to lose muscle mass at a rate of about 3 to 8% per decade from your 30s, which
Mm,
is significant.
mm.
Now, that doesn't accelerate through menopause, but it accelerates when you don't move and you don't do strength training, right?
I see.
And then Yeah, and
And
so
why
that
do women stop moving? Like, why do they move less as they get older?
good question. It's not just women that stop moving less as well. And
Yeah,
so I think what I'm trying to lean into here is that it isn't just all menopause. There's a lot that we can attribute to aging and being more sedentary. And I have a great example of this, Leslie. Like, so a friend of mine went on holiday recently and she'd earned this holiday. She was like, I'm exhausted. I've been working hard. I'm going to lie on a sunbed and read a book and drink cocktails, and that's going to be my holiday. And she
right.
looked, oh, vacation. Sorry, I'm so British with my words. And she looked over at the other side of the pool, and there was a mum with two kids who never stopped playing the whole time, throwing the kids in the air and running around and literally being frantic. And any of us that have been mothers remember that.
Yeah.
And I think just as life stages happen, we genuinely just don't move as much as we needed to before. And so we need to look for more purposeful ways of moving. And we just
Mm.
know this in general. Like we know that I think the numbers are something like 85% of people in North America, so US and Canada, do not meet exercise guidelines.
My
It's
goodness,
huge. And it's
that's
higher.
frightening.
And it's higher for strength training. It's higher, right? So
Um,
so if you think that most people don't get the required amount of cardiovascular exercise, or don't even think about how important strength training can be for going through menopause, for aging, for our health span, then and then just in general how our life stages have changed, we just don't move as much unless we need to, unless we make time to. And so long story short, it's complicated, and it just happens as we get older, right? And so
um,
a new emphasis needs to be put on the fact that as we get older, it's really, really important to keep moving. Your body actually needs it, right?
mm, yes. Okay, that's a really good point. So there's a confluence of this change in our sex hormones, as you said. We're going through menopause, and then we're also moving less.
Yeah, and we're getting older, and there's not a lot we can do about that, but there's a lot we can do about the moving less, right?
Right,
And it
right.
also helps support women going through menopause as well. Movement and exercise can be a great stress reliever, and get those endorphins moving, build strength, and help bone health, all of the positive things. Exercise really doesn't have very many downsides, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, proactively trying to focus on our health through exercise, nutrition, and all of the lifestyle interventions will
Yeah.
not only help women sort of potentially reduce their symptoms. I'm not guaranteeing that for anyone, because I know I went through the worst symptoms of my life and I was exercising, but it can be a stress reliever for a lot of women, but
Yeah.
also just future proofing ourselves, right? But if I can
Mm.
just quickly come back to the weight gain as well.
Yeah.
Weight gain can only happen when somebody is eating more calories than they actually use. And nobody
Yeah.
wants to have a calories in, calories out conversation, because it feels um, almost superficial, and it almost feels as though it's disparaging to women. And I'd like to just sort of clarify the science on this, because I think when you understand this and you appreciate this, it puts a lot more emphasis on you having control over your situation. And I'm all about giving women autonomy and making choices that support them. So energy balance is the idea that the energy that you take in should match the expenditure that you have, and you find this hormonal equilibrium, right? This energy equilibrium, sorry.
Mm.
And if you eat in excess of your body's needs, the body has no choice but to store that as fat.
Right.
And if you eat less than your body needs, the body will reduce the amount of fat that you hold. And so that's how sort of energy balance works. And energy is measured in calories. Calories is a measurement, it's a unit of measure. And these are the laws of thermodynamics. This is nutrition science, and we can't fight that. But there's so many influential parts that impact this equation. Symptom management, not sleeping, high stress, not moving as much, aging parents that you're looking after, and younger kids in that squeeze generation. We can stack that side of the argument for all of the reasons why nothing's working anymore. It's a really challenging time for women. Those hurdles are real. And so it's not a simple solution, but the science behind it is simple. And then the last part I want to just add on to that is that we have very, very good data from Herman Poncer, who is a metabolic researcher, and he has shown that the metabolism doesn't break and fall and break up in menopause at all. In fact, throughout our lifespan, it stays pretty stable until about the age of 60, when it drops by about 0.7%. So your metabolism's not broken either. So yay, hooray, that's another thing that's actually positive. So I just think it's really important for women to have basic information, because then they can go, okay, so if I know energy balance matters and I know metabolism's not broken, but I also know I've got all of these challenges, and that's potentially contributing to extra weight gain, feeling tired, and all of the other things that they're experiencing, then how can we make small, impactful steps to improve that? Where would be my starting point? And that's how I address these sort of situations.
Question for you. So I have a number of friends who have gone on, weight loss drugs, the semaglutide, during, I think, and it's been extremely helpful for them. So where do you stand on going the medication route?
Oh, I always come from a non-judgmental place, because it doesn't serve anybody to judge people about their personal journeys and habits. And one of the things that I do lean into is the science of everything. And unfortunately, what's happened is with the GLP-1s, all of these antagonists that are out there that really are helping people with their diabetes, being insulin resistant, and obese people to lose weight. I think it's amazing. I know so many people on it, and I think that it's been life-changing for them. What's happened, though, I believe, and I've seen, is that the GLP-1s have been abused now. So this always happens. If something's successful, then these were never created for everybody to go on. And I'm now seeing them advertised for women who've got £5 to lose, £10 to lose, and they're microdosing where there is zero data. There is zero data on that, and that doesn't come from me. That comes from the experts, the science that are out there. We also have many companies selling compounded versions of this, so not even the FDA or the Canada Health regulated, and you buy it off-label from a compounding, I said confounding, but maybe it's confounding, a compounding pharmacy, often telemedicine online, where there's no checks or balances. You can lie. You can say you're overweight, you can say you're under tall, all of the different things, and have them delivered to your home. And so I firmly sit on the side that this is, I think, a miracle drug for a lot of people, but it's definitely being abused by people leaning into women's insecurities about potentially having a few pounds to lose. And that's the side that is difficult for me to support, right? But one of the things I would say is that if it does support rapid weight loss, then it does that by suppressing people's appetite, right? Their appetite, they just don't want to eat. You just eat less, essentially. That's what's happening. You will start to lose fat rapidly, and unless you're actively strength training, you're going to lose muscle as well.
Good point.
And it happens with any extreme diet, not just this medication. With any extreme dieting, you will lose both, right? And so it's really important, if you're going to choose it for whatever reason, again, without judgment from me, consider doing a strength training program at least 2 times a week for 30 minutes, just so that you can hang on to any lean muscle that you have. Because what's happening is it's making women frail. We're starting to see examples of women that are very, very thin with low muscle mass. And so just try and work with someone who is a medical professional. Make sure you're an appropriate candidate, and realize that there's a little bit more to our bodies and our worth than what's tied around about how much we weigh. And that's something I just would love women to just accept a little bit more as well. It's okay. You're not less of a person because you've got a few extra pounds on you, right?
That's beautiful words. So sort of segueing on that, so what are the most important, evidence-based changes that women need to make to their diets actually during perimenopause and then on into post-menopause?
It's a really great
just 2 separate things, but
it is, but it isn't. It's a really great way you've worded it, because we can sort of talk about how it sort of our body goes through these changes, right? And it's a continuum. It doesn't go like in chunks, does it? It's a continuum of our lives. And actually, Leslie, this month is World Menopause Month in October, when we're recording this, and the focus on World Menopause Month is lifestyle medicine. And so one of the arms of lifestyle medicine is nutrition. And I really like this because I've been talking about menopause now for 8 to 10 years, right? And so I've always been like banging the drum saying, regardless of whether you're on hormone therapy or not, or any other pharmaceuticals, it doesn't matter. We need to dig into the lifestyle interventions because they work. We have real hard science to support them. And what's happened in the space that we're in is companies and influencers or whomever have seen that women are vulnerable, their body's changing, they feel out of control, and so they will sell you a diet. There's so many diets out there, and women just are going, well, that's the diet that I need to do for my menopause journey. And it's really important to know there isn't a specific menopause diet. That doesn't exist, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But what the menopause societies, and often when I talk about all these things, I'm not talking from just my opinion and my experience and education. I'm talking about what the menopause societies actually agree on globally. And globally, they lean heavily into diets like the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, which are very plant-focused diets. They're not vegan or vegetarian, but they actively encourage women and men, because this is just diet in general to support our body, to eat many fruits and vegetables, right? We just don't eat enough of those. Like, fill half of your plate with vegetables and fruits. Look for lean proteins in your fishes, chicken, meats, all try and get as much, and plant-based proteins too. There's nothing wrong with eating plant-based proteins, and sometimes they can be a great addition to your like just adventurous diet as well, right? We sometimes do that once a week. And then on top of that, starches are very important. Women are really scared of carbohydrates. We've been told to feed them all of our lives, right?
Yeah.
So they're our main energy source in our body. They change to glucose in our body and help our energy, and they cross the blood-brain barrier. And so I'm like saying to women, you're fatigued, you're exhausted through menopause. Your body wants glucose. It really does. It will help you feel better. And you don't need to reach for a blueberry muffin. You can have some like rice, potatoes, like you can still have a mostly whole food, healthy diet with the occasional blueberry muffin. Nobody should ever cut those out, but try and get the lion's share of your meal from sources like this. And actually, the Canada Health Guide, their food plate is great. And what's really interesting, Leslie, is that people are like, yeah, those food guides are all out of date. No, they're not. They get reviewed by health scientists. They're great, but people don't follow them. We don't get taught them in schools enough. But when they're reviewed and you look at people's socioeconomic status, like, are they going to food banks? Are they from indigenous cultures where they often don't have a lot of access to fruit and fresh fruit and vegetables? Like it tries to cover all of those bases. And I think that it's a really great leaping off point. But if I could just give generalized advice to women, it would be like, eat more fruit and vegetables. And by the way, nobody ever got fat eating too many bananas. I'm sorry, like, people are so scared of fruit, it drives me crazy. Don't eat the fruit. Eat the fruit. And then just minimize the fun stuff. the fun carbs, and so that's essentially and nothing changes through your lifespan. As you get older, you do need more protein.
I was just going to ask that, about the protein. There's so much focus on protein these days. So talk to us about protein, how that should fit into the diet as we get older.
Yeah, and it was a really great conversation. Now, protein has got like a new wave of like appreciation, and it is sort of like the queen of the macronutrients, I would say, because our body is made up of amino acids, and that's what a protein breaks down into, an amino acid in its finite form. And the RDA, the recommended daily allowance for protein, is very, very low, and it's based on sedentary people. And if we're trying to encourage people to be active, the protein needs increase.
Right.
And so if you're an active person, if you're somebody who is doing exercise and somebody who is, trying to get fit and healthy, you need to support that with adequate protein stores. And there's so many different equations out there, and if you boil them all down, the number tends to be the same roughly anywhere. And what I say to menopausal women is, if you could take a gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight. So let's say, for example, a woman whose ideal body weight is 140 pounds, I'm saying that's 140 grams of protein a day. That's on the high side.
Wow.
And so I would say to that person, so then if I was you, I would go down to about 80 to 100% of that. So then we're talking between 100 and 140 grams a day. The 140 grams a day, I'm talking about someone who's strength training a lot, is more active. But for most women, if you can hit 100 grams a day, you're onto a winner there. I struggle to get 100.
Well, this is it. It's actually, that's a lot. And so do you incorporate things like protein powders in order to get up to that 100 or 120?
Yeah, and I mean, I do, and I am obviously at the stage in my life where I don't need to like count everything all the time. I'm instinctively quite good at knowing when to look for protein. And so what I would say, even to pare that back a little bit more to people, is this. I don't need you to count and measure and do anything. It's just too stressful, and it can cause a lot of anxiety. But we do know that protein focus is important. And as you get older and older and older, you definitely need it, right? As we start to lose muscle mass, etc. And so try and look for it every meal. So for example, like for breakfast, you've just had a slice of toast with marmalade on. How about you have some Greek yogurt on the side? And for lunch, you've got that lovely green salad, because I've told you to eat loads more plants. Chuck some chicken on top of that because you need protein. Look for some protein every time you eat, and take that pressure away. And if you feel like you haven't had enough, stick it in a shake. Like, you could have a little bit of chocolate protein powder with a little bit of whole milk, shake it up, and that's like 40 grams of protein. So a lot of women will do that, and I think that that's perfectly fine. Don't stress it, but if you want to support your body, then you definitely need to look for it. But I also would add that if you're doing it to build muscle, the stimulus for building muscle is the resistance training. That's the mechanism is this resistance training. The protein supports that. So that's the big rock, and then start adding the protein. Sometimes I can't be bothered to chew my food, Leslie. I don't want to eat a big steak or chicken. And
it's so true. Yeah.
You didn't burn down an orphanage if you didn't eat your protein for the day. It's fine, but just have an increased awareness. So protein and fiber, they're the two things I tell women to just have an extra focus on.
Okay.
And you can do that with a Mediterranean diet quite easily. Yeah.
Okay. And question, because I've been incorporating creatine into my diet for strength training in particular. So so can you talk to us about creatine? And because it's getting a lot of attention too, especially for midlife women and that menopause transition.
Oh my goodness. And this is what happens. First of all, I would just say, as a natural born skeptic and a little bit cynical, I'm always like, oh God, he's the next thing. And it always is that. Like, the next thing's, we're all in weighted vests, in cold plunging in our weighted
I got one of those too.
Yeah. Right. So, but we can go into that if you want. But the creatine thing, it's a very well studied supplement, which is great, right? And there's some great researchers in Canada. Dr. Darren Kandow is a Canadian researcher. This is his area of expertise. And he's cautious the way he talks about this, right? So creatine, you should try and get the majority of the stimulus for strength training from your protein sources during the day. And the creatine's like the cherry on the top of that big sundae. It's not going to replace anything else. It's literally like the additional cherry. Think of it that way. Okay. There is emerging data, but it's not definitive about brain health. A lot of the data was done on people with brain deficiencies, things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, older individuals. There's no research on menopausal women and brain health, so we can just say that definitively, right? But it doesn't mean it may not help. It's certainly not going to hurt, right? But what we do know is if you're actively strength training, then creatine can really help with muscular performance and endurance. And that can be really great when you're tired and you want to work out. Some women, they don't notice any difference at all. And some do, right? Some women find it really bloats them and others don't, right? But all of the claims that have been made really boil down to the fact that if you're doing strength training, it can really help you.
Okay.
But all the other claims, we're not there and we're not able to support those yet or even at all, right? And I just think that like we tend to, as humans, think to ourselves, right, what do I need to do to like move the needle on this? Oh, it's creatine. And I'm like, are you strength training? Are you doing all of the basic big rock things? I'm a big rock person, and I like, when it comes to like the supplementation stuff, it's like, well, make sure you're doing the stuff that requires you to support it, right? And a lot of people aren't doing that yet. But to me, it's because it's not cheap. Like, I mean, it's like $50 for a container, and that might last you, depending on how much you use, like a month or 2 months. I mean, do you want to spend that if it's not going to actually do anything? And if you're strength training, I take it, right? I take it because I strength train, and I think it helps me. But I'm under no illusions that it's going to help with other stuff at the moment. And if it changes, I'll change too. I'll be like, yeah, we know a bit more now.
Understood. Okay. Excellent. And so, are there any other macronutrients that are important, other than the fiber, protein, that we should be aware of?
Well, the three macronutrients, as we know, that are carbohydrates, protein, and fats. And carbohydrates are broken down into our like complex carbohydrates, so the ones with lots of fiber and micronutrients in them. And there's also starches there. And then there's simple carbohydrates, and the simple carbohydrates is sugar, right? So on that spectrum, we need to be leaning more into the complex carbohydrates, like the fruit, the vegetables, the grains, and some starches, and then a little bit less of the, like I said, the fun carbs, right? And then fats tend to work themselves out. I mean, I know we had this whole movement for keto that's been and gone, but when you're equating for protein and looking at your fiber sources, the carbohydrates and the fats sort of you can do what you want with them. If you're somebody who is actively exercising, your body does need carbohydrates, it needs glucose, right? So don't be afraid to eat them. So to me, this is just like, eat a mixed bag of all foods that you enjoy, but try and aim for whole foods, because we know that they contain vitamins and minerals, and that's really important to us. And when you're doing that, you don't need to take extra multivitamin supplements. Right? I mean, the whole point of a supplement is that a supplement is meant to replace things that you can't adequately get from food sources, right? And some things are harder to get from food sources than others. But your multivitamins, if you eat an abundance of fruit and vegetables and even proteins and fats, you're going to cover your bases there.
Okay. And does the timing of certain macronutrients matter? So does it, like, should you bulk up on the carbohydrates late in the day or earlier in the day, or so how does that pan out?
Well, there's different schools of thoughts on this, and I'm going to remove fat from the equations because I think that we eat enough fat because we cook with it, and it's in foods, and it's very easy to find our like fat in foods. And when it comes to protein, spreading protein out throughout the day is perfectly fine. Like, the body doesn't tend to store it, so it's sort of just, like I said, if you look for protein throughout the day, that's a really great way to just know that you're keeping your protein stores available. And then carbohydrates, if you wanted to do carbohydrate timing, you could consider having like the simple, more ultra processed type foods. Like, I'll stick with the blueberry muffin for shits and giggles type thing, but the blueberry muffin in and around your workouts, because it breaks down in the body quicker. You get sugar into your body quicker. Like, I run with gummy bears because I just want that sugar hit when I'm running, right? But really, unless you're like an athlete who's doing endurance sports and you need to sort of like cut carb load potentially, and even that, there's naysayers about that now. I would potentially think about, if you wanted to fuel for your workouts, consider doing that. But if you're doing a 30-40 minute workout in the gym, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. And then if you keep your protein stores up during the day, you don't even need to quickly eat protein after workouts as well. You've got a period of time that you can just keep eating protein. So I really think that if we can take that pressure off people about when and what to eat, and just look at this more big picture and just say, you're just not eating enough carbohydrates. That's why you're tired.
Mm,
Right, you're having a 2 p.m. slump, and you're
mm,
reaching for the blueberry muffin because your protein stores are low. Like you know, protein helps stabilize blood sugars, right? And it helps keep us fuller longer. So if we keep our protein levels up, then we tend not to have those slumps in the day when we get extra hungry and we need quick satisfaction. And so understanding how your body responds to food is, to me, a little bit better than saying, oh, it's 10 o'clock, I have to eat this. Because
mm,
then we become stuck to this regimented way of eating that may not suit you. It's just
mm.
arbitrary, right?
Right, right. Okay, now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about cholesterol. So,
Mm.
I've heard that cholesterol increases during menopause. And so, what can we do about that from a nutrition standpoint? And is it possible to alter your diet such that you don't have to go on statins? That might be a really kind of like black and white question. So, give us all the nuances.
Right, exactly. First of all, speak to your healthcare professional if you've got high cholesterol, because it's the doctor that you need to be speaking to. But
Sir, question for you, Amanda. Should we all
yeah,
get tested for cholesterol
well,
around menopause,
right,
perimenopause?
I think so, and I think the American Heart Association and the Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation, I think I may have got that wrong actually, but all of the organizations recommend this, especially as we get older, because
Right.
guess what? Being sedentary, aging, and going through menopause somewhat all impact cholesterol, right? So
Right.
men get high cholesterol too, is the point,
Right.
right? But
Right.
menopause does have an impact on it. We do know that. And after menopause, we know that women are at a higher risk of cardiovascular disease
Yeah.
in general, right? It's the biggest killer of women. And all of the associations tell us that by shifting the needle on our diet,
Mhm.
even just a little bit can sort of move the needle by up to like 25%. And that can be things like reducing the amount of saturated fats that you're eating, the good stuff like butter and steak and things,
Ah,
things like that.
yes.
Saturated fat is easy to recognize because it goes hard when it's cold. That's like, saturated fat is solid fat.
Got it.
Um, but so increased cholesterol can happen. Don't freak out about it. There are many things that you can do to move the needle on this. First of all, speak to your healthcare professional. Ask for the blood test. Ask to get it tested. It usually is in a full blood panel, though, Leslie, in Canada. So maybe your primary caregiver can do you an annual blood test.
Yeah.
It depending on the type of cholesterol that you have, it can be impacted by exercise and by nutrition. Changing your diet to the diet that we just spoke about, like the way of eating, the Mediterranean-based diet, can be very, very impactful. Exercising and moving more can be very, very impactful as well. But if you're somebody who has a genetic leaning towards high cholesterol, my husband does. He's the fittest person I know, like crazy fit, has high cholesterol and is on a
Mm.
statin because of it, because it doesn't matter how well he eats, it doesn't really move the needle. And that's what the science is telling us. If it's a genetic reason that you're on it, usually there's not a lot you can do to move the number down with a good diet and exercise. But you still need to do the good diet and exercise anyway, but in addition to the statins. So it's a very individualized conversation that you need to have. But all of the societies are actively telling people, get out and just walk more. Really, walking can just have a real good impact on all of your metabolic systems in your body, right? And so we know that as we get older and go through menopause, we're at higher risk of some of these diseases and health conditions, that by exercising and improving our stress and getting decent sleep, we can sort of either mitigate them. Cardiovascular disease with exercise and nutrition can reduce the risk by 80%. That's nuts. Like,
That's
that's
huge.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so there's always this active campaign by them to like get women to realize that, and men, but there's so much that you have within your control, right? And if you need support in with medication, so what? Like, nobody should be ashamed about any of those things, right?
No. No, well, I think on that note, I want to thank you so much, Amanda. You've been amazing, such great information, and this is really putting women, a lot of this puts women in the driver's seat of their own health.
That's exactly how the reason I do my work, because I just want women to know if you know the actual information, then you get to make really valid choices. This gives you autonomy that you can make choices that support your body. You can have a valid conversation with your healthcare professional, and you can sort of become your own body's detective and what will work for you. And we're all very different, right? And I think that we can take general guidelines and then apply it to ourselves. And I'm very pragmatic about everything I do. What's the most practical way we can do this? How can we
Yes.
translate the complicated into practical solutions? And so
Yes.
hopefully this has been helpful for some.